excuse me, are you here for the hip hop auditions? That's the virtual room next door.
I'm here for it, Dan. Oh, it's the end of the season. Finally, let's move on. Let's see what's going to happen here with our Bears.
Yeah, listen, week 18, this is the first time we've ever had to endure week 18, and week 19 is probably going to include a lot of conversation at the very least. How much change? We don't know. That's Dionne Miller of ABC7. I'm Dan Reed of the Chicago Tribune. It's been a while since we talked about the state of this team. I'm not sure our impressions of the state of this team are that much different, but boy, are they going into a pivotal stretch here. And I'll start with you. Where does this thing head once the final gun sounds on Sunday's game in Minneapolis, which of course is another meaningless finale between the Bears and Vikings, which we've become quite familiar with over the years?
It's like a fitting bow on the end of the season, right? With these two teams. I disagree with Matt Nagy. I think he insists too much that he's being honest with us, that I think he's lying. I think he has already been told and has to know. He has to know that this is the end for him. And it's sad. It's sad in a lot of ways, because you think back to 2018, where they truly felt like they were one made field goal away from a trip to the Super Bowl. And now to look at them, not even like an also ran. I mean, not terrible. The Giants were in town last week. We know they're not that bad, but at the same time, like just kind of treading water in this mediocrity that has to change. And I would hope it's a big change. I think it has to be a big change because of the fact that we're right back here where we've been before, Dan. Like we've taken 4 years with Matt Nagy, the Ryan Pace collaboration, and that isn't working. So that has to be a bigger change coming.
You say we're right back here where we've been. We're right back where we always are. I'm not sure we ever left, right? It's just this state of mediocrity that defines everything. And I just wrote down, I'm trying this acronym out because this happens every year. It's the ALTNT wins. And that's at least they're not the blank. Last year it was at least they're not the Jaguars. At least they're not the Texans. Last week we had, at least they're not the Giants. And for whatever reason, that seems to create a sense of confidence and security at 1920 Football Drive in Lake Forest that, well, things could be worse, shrug and move on, right? And they have to be a lot more serious about where they are trying to head. And I think that's the starting point for all this, Dionne, is where exactly are they trying to head? What is the bullseye? And what are the benchmarks you use as an organization to measure success, right? We always get these vague terms from the top of the food chain at Halas Hall about, boy, we really feel good about the collaboration. We really feel good about where we're headed. But they're never set up to have very specific bars. They did set a very specific bar for 2020. George told you he wanted to see whether the 2020 team was more like 2019 or 2018. He got his answer and he didn't care, right? And so then last year, I'm going to read you some quotes from almost a year old now from that infamous press conference with George and Ted. This is Ted Phillips. We're going to know whether we're headed in the right direction or not. File that away. George McCaskey. All four of us will know whether there's been sufficient improvement or sufficient progress to continue past 2021. Any neutral observer sits on the outside and watches the product that's been on the field for 17 weeks now, an 18th week coming in Minneapolis, and says, we're going to know whether we're headed in the right direction or not. Okay, that's pretty easy. They're not headed in the right direction. All four of us will know whether there has been sufficient improvement or sufficient progress to continue past 21. That's pretty easy too. There has not been sufficient improvement or sufficient progress. So what is going to happen on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week? And how are they going to explain it if something other than massive changes occur inside that building? You mentioned that Matt already knows. Whether Matt's been told or not, Matt knows, right? Like Matt knows that this is his last couple days of practice. His last game is Sunday. But then what? Ryan, Ted, George, they all need to figure out what their futures are, and they need to explain it to us with that whole framework that I just laid out of what they told us these last 12 months were going to be about. And clearly here we are.
You know, what's amazing is last year we talked about this list of questions we had for George and for Ted and how we were going to attack that press conference. Dan, the questions are exactly the same. Yes. I mean, like, and that's where you hope that George McCaskey is not clouded by the fact that, well, we're having these feel good moments at the end here, right? Like it needs a whole reboot. This is not acceptable. And that's the action I want them to take, is that look, we see what you see, fans. We're not in any sort of disillusionment that things are going in a direction at all. I mean, it's all lip service at this point. They're not actually making the progress on the field. So that I would hope that means systemic change, and I would hope that even means Ted Phillips has to go, because this is the same guy that brought us Phil Emery and Mark Trestman. Like that should have been enough. That was 2 regimes ago. Like if you think about that and the hand that he's had and all of that, I feel like he needs to be repurposed if they really love him. Let him oversee what they're doing in Arlington Heights, like you've talked about. Like let him have that as his baby. Maybe even have him and Ryan collaborate on that if they don't want to let Ryan Pace go. But as far as football operations, top to bottom, we got to start again.
Well, so I brought you numbers. You know, always like when I bring you numbers. And these are Ted Phillips oriented numbers. Ted has been in this current role with the Bears since 1999. This is the end of his 23rd season in the role of team president and CEO. They have 10 double-digit loss seasons. This is the 10th versus 6 playoff appearances. They have 8 last place finishes versus 5 division championships. Okay, those are big picture macro numbers that you can attach to Ted Phillips and say, okay, what exactly are the on-field results that you're getting out of him in this role? George McCaskey has been resistant and almost stubbornly so to the idea that their hierarchy needs some revision, right? That the actual way that they do business with the team president and CEO overseeing the hiring of the general manager and the annual evaluation of the general manager, which is a very important part of this equation. He thinks it's not the problem, right? The structure is not the problem. He says it's the people, right? Okay, well then let's change the person, right? You got to change one of those 2 things, the structure or the person. Otherwise, you're going to get the same results, which they've gotten for 30 plus years now. This brings us to the question, and we'll get to back to Ted in a minute, but of Ryan, right? And what do they do with Ryan? And I can tell you that there has been increasing chatter from people both connected to the building and people in the outside world that have a pulse on this thing, that there is a belief growing that Ryan is safe, right? Okay, so here we are. We're trying to filter through how much of that chatter is truly informed by the people at the top of the chain, which would be i.e. George and Ted, and how much of it is just kind of a feel because of the way things kind of evolve and flow up there. But your thoughts on that, given everything we heard last January about collaboration, your thoughts on the idea that Matt is definitely gone and Ryan is potentially safe?
It's hard to separate the 2 of them because they were all about like this teamwork and being together. But Ryan's been there for 7 years. I appreciate that they like him. He's a great guy. He's a great guy. But as far as putting together a football team, a winning football team, that isn't happening, Dan. So how can they say that that's okay for him to stay in his current role and to continue to get a chance to have another head coach come in, another, like, oversee another roster, putting together another roster? Like, I just don't think that I feel like that's a little tone deaf, don't you?
Without question. And we're in the state. You mentioned asking these questions to George and Ted and whoever else shows up on our computer screens next week, and how repetitive they are to last year. I looked up and I wrote down verbatim the same question I asked last year in January, which was, what have you seen that indicates you are making meaningful progress toward winning a championship, right? Like, what have you seen that shows you are on the direction towards winning a championship, which is always the stated goal. And that's the question they need to answer. Right now, again, 7 seasons under Ryan Pace. They haven't won a playoff game. They've had 1 winning season. It was a really fun winning season, without question. They won 12 games. Ryan was the Sporting News Executive of the Year. Matt was the Coach of the Year. It looked like the Super Bowl window was open, but the Super Bowl window closed, right? Like a guillotine. Boom, down it came. And it's closed now, right? And so here we are back in the same state. And I don't know how you sell collaboration and then attach the results to the coach while letting the GM skate free. If they do that, they better be ready for 1, 25 minutes of questions on that topic, and 2, a wave of public backlash that is going to be even more intense than it was in January 2021. Boy, I mean, it's so uncomfortable to constantly be having the same conversations and breaking down the same topics.
Okay. I again, we go back to Ryan Pace and his track record. It's great they have Justin Fields. Hopefully they haven't messed him up, but this is the same man who was so afraid that someone else was going to draft Mitch Trubisky that he moved up to select a backup quarterback to be the franchise guy. That in and of itself is a decision that in my brain is like, all right, thank you for your time, right? Like, oh my goodness, that set back the whole franchise, Dan. It wasn't like it was just a flip in the pan, and that was a huge swing and miss, huge. And it's left them in this cycle that they're in right now.
This was part of a tweet storm that I put out on Thursday morning because a couple of weeks ago, obviously, I forced you to read that lengthy piece that I wrote in December about the state of the organization. It was 8,000 plus words, I think, at last count. And you read every word of it. So thanks for doing that. But there were some things that didn't make it, believe it or not. There were things that were left on the cutting room floor. And this is one thing that was left on the cutting room floor, because I want to read this to you, because this is what people in the outside world say. They scratch their head until there's no hair there, and it's just a raw patch of anger, right? And so we talked about Mitch Trubisky being his developmental regression torpedoed that Super Bowl season in 2019, right? They finished 8-8, and it was like, boy, that was really frustrating to live through when you thought you were going to pursue a championship, couldn't get the quarterback right. Ted Phillips, in the days after that season, was asked kind of about the drafting of Trubisky over Watson and Mahomes. Remember, at that point, Patrick Mahomes was the reigning league MVP, and he was on his way to winning his first Super Bowl. He was on his way to winning his first Super Bowl with a playoff victory over Deshaun Watson in the AFC divisional round. Ted said in the days after the Bears season ended and those other two quarterback seasons were still going, we try not to get into that comparison game. We believe in Mitch. Patrick Mahomes is an anomaly. Nobody expected that kind of performance, right? These are the things, these are nuggets. This is not an isolated incident. We always talk about that. These are the ways they judge success, right? And this drives people in the outside world crazy. It drives proud alumni of this franchise even crazier, because they're saying, what? You're willing to shrug past the miss on a Hall of Fame quarterback, potentially two Hall of Fame quarterbacks, for a guy that's now a backup in Buffalo. At the time, we didn't know that's where he was headed. But it's just a illumination of just how quickly they're like, no big deal. Right. What are we going to do about it? We made the mistake, and so what? And it's like, well, wait a second. Oh my goodness.
There has to be some accountability for that, Dan.
For everything, for something, for everything.
For everything. You're exactly right. Like, they have to. I get back to, I appreciate their loyalty. I appreciate their commitment to, we really like him as a person. That's awesome. That's awesome. But it's not, the objective is to win football games, to win championships, to be headed towards that, to be making progress towards that, not having some flash in the pan one season and then not even able to get above 500 after that. Like, not even able to put together winning streaks, to be more proud of the fact that you bounced back from losing streaks than the fact that you blew a 5-1 start last year. Like, it's just so frustrating that it feels like they can put this window dressing on all of it and make us almost crazy. Like, wait, are we the crazy ones? Like, how do they not see this? And so here's hoping that whoever they put on this Zoom next week is going to answer the questions in a more open and honest way, and be real about it. I mean, if they're really going to keep Ryan Pace, dear Lord, give me a whole list of the reasons why you think he's in his current role. Now, if they repurpose him again, I think that I can get on board with that. But in his current role, absolutely not. I need pages of explanation as to why that would be okay.
Well, and again, in my extensive reporting for that story that we talked about, one of the repetitive themes from everyone you talk to, affiliated with the Bears, not affiliated with the Bears, around the league, it's a whole wide network of people that talked, is that the Bears constantly shrug past sustained stretches of mediocrity while becoming overly intoxicated by flashes of success. You just mentioned it there. That's kind of the DNA of the building right now. I'm reading you one more quote, and then I'll put my phone down so I won't be rude. But this was also from a source. The Bears live in a constant state of denial from the top down. They stubbornly refuse to acknowledge that what everyone in the outside world sees is actually real. And that's exactly what you just reiterated a couple minutes ago about why do they not see what everyone else sees, or do they just want to be stubborn and just be like, the outside world, right? Like, just be honest with yourself. The mirror has to show you what the mirror shows you, right?
Yeah, 100%. They don't have the luxury of going rogue and doing their own thing. And they don't have a track record that proves that they're allowed to make the decisions that is setting them up for success. They don't have any of that. In fact, it's been the exact opposite, which again leads us back to, I mean, they have to start at the top and say, this has got to change. We cannot keep doing the same thing again and again and expect it to be different. So that's where, it's infuriating. So that's where they leave us, right? Like, asking a bunch of questions, wondering at this moment, are they really going to make the changes necessary to make this franchise competitive again? And I don't know if they're going to. I believe Nagy's gone, yes, but if Pace is around in any way, like how does he even stay in the building if he's not in that same role? Like that would be really, really hard. And to be there and say, you're allowed here, but you're not allowed to touch like what we brought you here to do. So now you have to, I mean, how would he even navigate that? That
would be really awkward, difficult. Right? And it would require a lot of logistical recalibration and everything else that you have to do. And you'd have to figure it out. Have they started to figure it out? Listen, like, again, this is another constant theme is this season we knew was over in really early to mid-November, right? It was over. So you've had 2 months to figure out an action plan and to have contingency plans. And I hope to God they haven't been intoxicated by wins over the Seahawks and the Giants, right? Because they're ALTNT wins.
Yeah.
I'm going to get that right. ALTNT wins. And so, you know, like you hope that there has been movement toward a direction that we're just not privy to yet over these last 2 months. Are you confident there's been that movement? I certainly am not, right? I just have no idea what they're thinking inside there. And this is another sort of ramification of being so radio silent and being so detached from the media as a conduit to the public, right? Like you don't give anyone any sort of perception of how you've responded to anything in the last 12 months. There's been a lot that's happened in the last 12 months, and we have no idea which disappointments bother them, which successes they're clinging to. You have to kind of let people in on that. Otherwise, you're going to stand up there, articulate a vision again on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of next week, and people are going to go, wait a second, were you just experiencing the same year that we just experienced?
Right.
Sufficient improvement, sufficient progress. We'll know where they're heading in the right direction.
But I don't know. You say that the season was over 2 months ago. You mean when they first told Matt Nagy that he was done after the season is? I think
when others did. When others did.
I mean, it's amazing. Like 2 months ago was that Thanksgiving week that was so crazy and bonkers and mismanaged and mishandled, and yet I think there was some truth to it. And so now, which says a lot about Nagy. Like, do you know how hard it is, Dan, to know you're not going to have a job and then to go in and do it every single day? Like that's happened in our business. It's happened to me. It's happened to my husband. Like that happens where they say, we're not going to renew your contract, but we'd like you to finish your current one. That stinks. And Nagy's fought through all of that, insisting that he's been told nothing, which I don't believe. But I'm wondering if action was taken during that week when those rumors started flying, if action was really taken in any capacity, did they start developing a plan? Did they start targeting people they would want to bring in? Did they start really looking at who's there right now on the coaching staff that they would like to continue to help Justin Fields develop into the quarterback they believe him to be? I would hope that if those rumors started flying, they were starting to put something together, right?
Right.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's it. Right. And that's why the outside world is constantly asking these questions, because I don't know. Right. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if they know. They don't know. They don't know that we don't know that they don't know. You're right. I think it's constantly a state of confusion. I will say this about the wins over the Seahawks and the Giants. It has at least given Matt a softer landing. And I said this on the radio earlier this week. It didn't have to be like a 2 and a half month onslaught of Matt as a bad coach and everything else. And it wasn't this giant, egg dropped from the 75th floor of the Hancock building that just splats. At least we've been able to cushion his landing here. I think everyone just wants to get through Sunday's game and just get this chapter over with, right? And say, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. You've been kind to us. You've been, for the most part, respectful. And, and let's just move on and figure out what's next. And so there has at least been that. Again, you go back to John Fox. His tenure as Bears coach ended in Minneapolis. Mark Trestman, his tenure as Bears coach ended in Minneapolis. Matt's tenure as head coach appears like it will end in Minneapolis. And there's different levels of awkwardness to each one of these situations. And now it's just the opportunity to experience that and then figure out how quickly the organization is going to move and what they're going to do. I have a feeling like you and I are going to be sitting here a month from now, save the date, February 6th, just going through everything that we experienced and going, whoa. There's something is going to make us say whoa in the next 30 days or so. And it's going to be fascinating to know what that is.
I know. I'm kind of interested. I mean, if the season wasn't exciting, the off season definitely can be. That's for sure. You know what? I have a new idea, Dan. I think that because they're playing an 18th week, that if you're so bad and you're out of it, you should have the option to just be like, you know what? We're good. We're good. We're good through week 17. We're going to move on at the end. I think they should give them that option.
But then you wouldn't get Justin for one more game, and I really think that Justin can benefit from one more game. I feel okay about it. Justin Fields' last victory as a starting quarterback was October 10th in Las Vegas, right?
Yeah.
It's a long time ago. A rookie quarterback going into an offseason without having won a game since October 10th is a little bit, I don't want to say suffocating, but it doesn't feel good, right? And so this is one more opportunity for Justin to gain experience, to gain familiarity with a group of players in the Vikings that he may see again twice next year, right? There's an opportunity to build that library, to gain experience, and then most importantly, to get some momentum and positive energy going forward. If they can have a game like they had in the second half of Pittsburgh, right? And that's the lasting game that he can take on through the next 6 months of growth and development under whoever's coaching him. That's a plus for Justin Fields. For the rest of us, it's just a 3-hour formality to get us to the end. And obviously, we'll keep an eye on a few other things in that game. But boy, it's really all about what happens Sunday night, Monday morning, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then where we go in the month of January, which for 14 teams is going to be a playoff month. And for the Bears, it's going to be like, oh, Nelly, here we go.
Yeah, they're going to give us plenty to talk about. They truly are. I mean, I don't know. At first I was like, I don't really want Justin to play, but I suppose you're right. A little momentum.
I'm always right. I'm always right. You don't question me.
Oh my gosh. Most of the time. I guess most of the time you're right. No, it'll be good. It'll be good for him to have some more experience and to feel good about going into his off season, and then we'll see what happens. At least he's healthy. Like, let's keep him healthy. Can we do that?
We can try. Well, we promised the masses another one of these videos on February 6th, but we're going to have probably 5, 6, 10 others between now and then, right? There's going to be a lot to talk about as we go. And so we are not going to abandon this loyal audience who supported us through 2021. And we're into 2022, which you said just a minute ago is all about new ideas.
I mean, I'm going to write our rap song. We're going to break that out next week. So stick around for that.
I am not signing up for that. I actually had a budding rap career when I was like in 7th grade, and that's actually a total falsity, but I thought I did. So,
well, I mean, I hate to brag, but I can rap. I can throw it down.
I can't.
Somebody else writes the lyrics. I can do it.
You want to know a grand reveal? This would be a grand reveal for the audience. You know what my rap name was in 7th grade?
Oh my gosh, do tell.
Crazy Milk.
What? What was it?
And with that.
Did you say Crazy Milk?
Sure did.